Hi, good to see you again. Welcome to Block 4, Operations and Equations with Directed Numbers. Directed numbers are also known as positive and negative integers. Lesson 2. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to, understand and use directed numbers. Um, First, knowing how to position or label directed numbers on a given number line. You also extended your learning to apply that same knowledge of knowing how to work with intervals on a number line to look for missing numbers in a number sequence which involved positive and negative numbers. All right. In today's lesson, you're going to learn how to order directed numbers. Remember, directed numbers refer to positive and negative integers. Integers mean whole numbers. So you're going to be learning how to order these numbers, positive and negative integers, using lines, for example, on a number line, and then using appropriate symbols, for example, whether they are greater than, less than, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Before we start, I would like you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video to those you think can benefit, especially children in parts of the world who may not have access to high quality maths education or who may not have the financial resource to do so. Thank you. Before we start, I would like you to answer the retrieval practice questions in 3 minutes. Okay. Assuming you have paused the video and you've answered the questions, let's check our answers. So here we can see that we've been asked to write the numbers shown by the arrows on the number line. Okay. So how do we know what to do with this? So very quickly, so we know that between 14 and between negative 14 and negative 10, we definitely know that this is smaller compared to that. So the numbers will be increasing going that way. So between 14 and negative 10, we have 4, okay, or negative 4, right? We have 1, 2 intervals between these two. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, right? All right. So, or we can just regard it as 2 every time. So it means we are adding. So we can remove the negative sign. It doesn't really matter. So we know that the numbers are increasing. So it means we're adding 2 every time. So you see that we're adding 2 every time. Next is to refer you to our previous lesson. And of course, you can see the arrows. So that's negative 12, negative 4, and then 4. Now, this refers you to the what we learned in our previous lesson, which is the counters, positive counters that shows positive 4 or 4, and this shows negative 8. So we have 8 negative counters. Okay. Here we're asked to complete the linear sequence. You do know that for a linear sequence, the numbers are either increasing or decreasing every time. Now we can see that this is a decreasing sequence. Why? Negative 2 is larger than negative 4, and negative 4 is larger than negative 8. So we're going to much smaller numbers. Now, if you look at this, you will see that the difference is 2. Okay, so it means we are decreasing by 2 every time. So the next one should be negative 6, and the next one should be negative 10. Let's do some new learning for today. If you're asked which number is greater, what would you do? What do you think? Well, something you need to know is that if we use our number line to help us, something you need to know is that the further we go to the right of a number line, the bigger the numbers. So if you think about these two numbers, 2 and 4, which one is greater? Of course, you would say is 4. Yeah. 4 is bigger than 2. But when it comes to negative numbers, sometimes some students may find it a bit challenging thinking, but how does negative numbers really work? Just imagine in your head that if you have a number line, as you move to the right of the number line, the numbers get bigger. So, thinking about that, you can see that negative 4 is further right on the number line compared to negative 12. So, negative 4 is greater than negative 12. Or we can write it the other way around. Negative 12 is less than negative 4. So, remember, the further right you move on a number line, the bigger the numbers. Okay? So it means if you're moving further left, you're going to have numbers that may seem really big. For example, negative 1 billion will be further left on the number line. So negative 1 billion has to be smaller than negative 4, which is further right on the number line. All right. If we're asked, here's another example. If we're asked to write these numbers in ascending order, what does ascending even mean? Ascending means to write the number from the smallest to the biggest. Okay, so from the smallest to the biggest. So ascending means you write your numbers from the smallest to the biggest. So let's start with the smallest. Well, we know already, thinking about our number line, we know that all the positive numbers are bigger than the negative numbers. So let's start arranging the negative numbers anyway. Now, remember that the further left you go on the number line, the smaller the numbers. And we want to arrange these numbers in ascending order, so from the smallest. Now, if you think about it, negative 12 has to be the furthest down on the left on the number line. The next one has to be 21. 21 is furthest to the left on the number line compared to negative 12. So now that we have arranged all the negative numbers in ascending order, we can then put a 0. All right. We know, okay, we'll get to the 0 before we get to the positive. So now let's look at the positive numbers. We know that 12, okay, we have a 0. We know that 12 is smaller than 21. And that's it. We've arranged our numbers. And of course, 212 has to be bigger. Why? It has hundreds. 21 has 2 tens. 12 has just 1 10. So using your place value chart, you can actually mentally arrange these without doing much work. All right. Let's see how to answer this question. Here's another example. Here you're asked, write an integer in the boxes to make each statement true. Integer means whole number. So write a whole number in the box to make the statement true. Well, we need to write a number here. It could be lots of numbers, okay? Because look at the interval. We have negative 20 to 10. So this sign means greater than. So whatever is here is greater than negative 20. Of course, remember, as you move further right on the number line, the numbers become greater. So the very first number that is greater than negative 20 is negative 19. So we can have negative 19, 18, so on and so forth. Okay, but 10 cannot be part of it. Why? Because look, this sign means whatever is here has to be less than whatever is on the other side. So 10 cannot be. 10 is not less than 10, right? So the last number that we can write there is 9. Why the first one that we can write there is negative 19. Okay, let's look at this one. What number would you start with? Of course, negative 19. So we can carry on from negative 19. But why have we used negative 5 instead of stopping at negative 4? Of course, I'm sure somebody would have said, or you're thinking the same like I am, this sign means less than or equal to. So the number here could be either less than negative 5 or equal to negative 5. All right. So the numbers that we could use are any integers from negative 19. Of course, negative 19 is greater than negative 20 to negative 5. It's now time for you to practice. Well done for sticking around and for learning. Practice what you've learned. Pause the video and answer questions 1 and 2 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 1 and 2, here are the answers. Let's discuss them and mark our work. So here you'll simply ask, mark where these temperatures are on the thermometer. So here you can see that that's negative 10. You want to mark these temperatures. And to be able to mark them, negative 8, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So negative 7 will be 7, counting 7 of these. So down along 7. 2 should be 2 somewhere there. Negative 5 should be 5 after 5 intervals after 0. And then negative 8 will be 8 intervals after negative 0. Okay. Write the temperatures in order from hottest to coldest. Okay. And this is the order. Yeah. Next, you're asked to write either the less than symbol, greater than symbol, or equal to complete the statements. So you may use the number line to help you. So remember, the further down you go to the right, the bigger the number. The further down you go to the left, the smaller the number. And here are the answers. So mark your work and celebrate your success. Pause the video and answer questions 3 and 4 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 3 and 4, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So here you're asked to write these numbers in ascending order. Now remember, one other thing you need to know is a really big negative number is actually the smallest number. All right, let me repeat. A really big negative number is actually the smallest number in real life. Okay, so you can see why this one has to be first. Okay, and the next one, you can see it there. All right, next one, and that one. Okay, next, here is a part of a number line. All right, you're asked, write 3 numbers greater than B but less than C. All right, so 3 numbers that could be, but first you're going to have to work out the numbers, right? So let's do that really quickly. So you have 0 and 20. So the difference between 0 and 20 is 20. And you can see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you have 4 intervals. So we need to split this. You need to divide this by 4 to find out what each interval is worth. So that's 5. All right. So that has to be 5, right? And that should be 10, and that should be 15. Okay. So you're being asked, write 3 numbers greater than B but less than C. So 3 numbers could be 6, 11, and 13. Anything between 5 and 15. Okay. And then write 3 numbers between negative 20 and A. So we know the numbers, increasing or decreasing by 5. So this has to be negative 5. We're adding 5 every time. This negative 10, all right? And that should be negative 15. So really quickly, you can see why these answers are correct. Pause the video. And okay, that's the first part of our lesson that we have done. So let's now look at the next part by looking at this example. So Jack says that negative 17.35 is greater than negative 17.2 because 35 is greater than 2. Then Eva says that no, negative 17.35 is greater than negative 17.2 because negative 17.35 is further from 0 than negative 17.2. Ron says neither of them are correct. Who do you think is right? Have a think. All right. So let's think about this. If you remember, if we represent these numbers on our number line really quickly, okay, so the numbers we have to be dealing with, let's start from 17.1, negative 17.1, negative 17.2, all the way to negative 17.4. Now, if you think about this, where would we position negative 17.2? Right there. What about negative 17.35? Now, remember that when you're going that way, all right, the numbers get bigger, right? So negative 17.35 has to be, remember what I said, a bigger negative number is actually smaller in real life, right? So negative 17.35 might look big, but it should be here, right? It should be here because it looks bigger when you look at it, without the negative, but because you have negative in there, it's actually smaller. So it should go further left of 17, negative 17.3. Now, can you see why Ron is correct? Neither of them is correct. Okay, why? Negative 17.35 is further left on the number line, so it is actually less than negative 17.2. All right, let's look at another example. Whitney has a thermometer in her freezer. Part of the thermometer is shown below. She says that the temperature in her freezer is negative 18.5 degrees. Do you agree with Whitney? Have a think. Of course, I'm going to disagree. Why? Remember, looking at 18.5, it might look like a big number. So you think, okay, 18.5, that should be 18.5. So Whitney is thinking about the number literally as if it were a positive number. But no, that's not right. Because this here, remember, these numbers are bigger than the numbers here. So negative 15 is bigger than negative 16. All right. So as you go further down, you're going to be using numbers that would normally look bigger. Okay. So that is negative 16.5, negative 17.5. Negative 18.5 should be here. So she is wrong, right? So our answer is actually negative 17.5. All right, pause the video and answer the rest of the questions. You have learned about working with directed numbers, negative and positive numbers that are even decimal numbers. The principle is the same. When you look at your numbers, the further down along the left on the number line that you have your number, the smaller the number, and the further right on the number line, the bigger the number. Okay. Pause the video and answer questions 5 and 6 in 2 minutes. All right, assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here, we're asked to label these numbers on the number line. So we have negative 1, negative, we have 0, we have 2 intervals. So it means each should be 0.5. Now, if this is negative 1.5, that should be halfway between 1.5 and negative 1.5 and negative 1. So that should be negative 1.25. All right. This is negative 0.5. So that should be halfway between them. So that should be negative 0.75. Okay. And then so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Here you ask, explain why Whitney is incorrect. So she says 0.75 is greater than negative, negative 7.5 is greater than negative 7 as 7.5 is more than 7. What has she done wrong? She has forgotten that negative 7.5 is more negative than negative 7. So negative 7.5, if you were to draw a number line, will be further down the left. Okay, so it should be, and you can see the number line here. So it is actually less than negative 7. Pause the video and answer questions 7 and 8 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 7 and 8, here are the answers. So here you were simply asked, which number is the greatest? It has to be 0.2. Yeah. Which number is the smallest? It has to be that one, right? Remember, a really big negative number is actually very, very small. Okay, here, write less than or greater than to complete the statements. And here they are. Okay, so by now, you know how to use these symbols. You know how to rank negative numbers. You know their order of size, okay, when you just look at them. Pause the video and answer questions 9 and 10 in 4 minutes. You can take longer, you can take shorter. You don't have shorter time. You don't have to use the exact time. Okay, let's look at the answer really quick. Question 9, you were asked, 5 numbers are written in ascending order, and here they are. What could the 4th number be? Can you find more than one answer? Of course, we can find more than one answer. So you can see that the number here, so they are written in ascending order. Between negative 7 and negative 4, we have an interval of 3. That's an interval of 1. Okay. So we could have the number negative 2, right? So that will be an interval of 1 again. So you can have negative 2. You could have, if it's written in ascending order, you can have negative 1. You can have, other numbers. Okay, here, write the missing digits to make the statements correct. Okay, so you can have various answers. Okay, these are just answers you can have. So negative 7.5, if we want to write a number that negative 7.5 is greater than, that number could even be, negative 7.55, negative 7.65, negative 7.85, right? And then here, that number could be negative 7.45, negative 7.35, because that number has to be greater than that one. Okay, and these are the answers. All right. Pause the video and answer question 11 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the question, let's mark the work and celebrate your success. So here you ask, you're given a table and it shows the melting points of some elements, and then you ask which element has the lowest melting point. Remember, a really large negative number is actually very small, and you can see that has to be hydrogen. All right. And then next you ask, write the elements in order from lowest melting point to highest melting point. So you start with hydrogen and you start to pick the negative. So pick the negative numbers first, and then you order them, and that will be your answers. That brings us to the end of our lesson. So what we have learned so far in today's lesson is we have learned how to order positive and negative integers using number lines, using greater than, less than symbols. And we have learned something really important, that when you are thinking about negative numbers, always think that if the number is actually really big, when you look at it without the negative sign, but now that you have the negative sign next to it, it has to be very small compared to something else. So something you must not forget is if you use a number line to position the number, if it is further down the left compared to another number, that number is actually less than the number you're comparing it with. But if it is further down the right compared to another number, it is actually greater than the number you're comparing it with. Really well done for sticking around and for learning today. Until next time, take really good care of yourself, and bye-bye.